Namaskar and welcome to Diplomatic Dispatch. I'm your host, Vikas Swarup. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval hosted a meeting of his counterparts from 5 Central Asian countries in New Delhi on December 6. And that will be our focus in this edition of the program. India's Connect Central Asia policy dates back to 2012, a broad-based framework for focused engagement in political, security, economic and cultural fields with the region, which is part of India's extended neighborhood and with which we share historical and civilizational ties, dating back to the ancient Silk Route. However, despite its forward-looking orientation, the policy suffered due to lack of institutionalized mechanisms to engage Central Asian countries at the political and economic levels. Connectivity initiatives also could not make much headway due to geopolitical strains. All this changed with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to all 5 Central Asian countries in July 2015, the first by an Indian Prime Minister. Since then, there has been significant progress in cooperation, particularly in the fields of defense, energy and connectivity. The inception of the India-Central Asia dialogue at foreign ministers level in 2019 provided an institutional framework for engagement. India hosted its 3rd edition in New Delhi last year from December 18 to 20. A month earlier, in November 2021, India hosted the 3rd Regional Security Dialogue in which security chiefs of 7 other countries, including Russia, Iran, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan participated to evolve a common approach to the Taliban dispensation in Afghanistan. This was followed by the first India-Central Asia Summit hosted by Prime Minister Modi in virtual mode on January 27 this year, where he outlined 3 key objectives. First, to make it clear that cooperation between India and Central Asia is essential for regional security and prosperity. Second, to give an effective structure to this cooperation by establishing a framework of regular interactions at different levels and among various stakeholders. And third, to create an ambitious roadmap for this cooperation. It was decided at the summit to hold a leaders' summit every 2 years, schedule regular meetings among the foreign, trade and culture ministers, a joint working group on Afghanistan, joint counter-terrorism exercises between India and interested Central Asian countries, and a joint working group on Chabahar port. Another important decision taken at the virtual summit was to hold regular meetings of secretaries of security councils to discuss security-related developments in the region. The December 6 meeting hosted by India's NSA was in sync with this decision. Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan were represented by their national security advisors and Turkmenistan by its ambassador to India. India hosted the conclave with a focus on evolving a common framework to deal with challenges of terrorism in the region, including Afghanistan, and ways to bolster overall security cooperation. At the meeting, NSA Doval flagged India's growing concern over use of Afghan soil for terrorist activities, including by Pakistan-origin terror groups like Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Toiba. He said, financing of terrorism is its lifeblood, and countering terror financing should be an equal priority for all of us. He also said that connectivity with Central Asian countries remains a key priority for India and that New Delhi stands ready to cooperate, invest and build connectivity in the region. To learn more about this meeting and recent developments in India-Central Asia relations, I have with me 2 superb experts. Ambassador Skand Tayal is a veteran diplomat who served as India's Consul General in Johannesburg and Houston and as ambassador to Uzbekistan and South Korea. Dr. Meena is head, West and Central Asia Center, Tillotoma Foundation. She has authored numerous publications on India-Central Asia relations, the SCO, regional connectivity and global issues. A very warm welcome to both of you. Let me begin with you, Dr. Roy. Why is India devoting so much attention and resources to the Central Asian region?
When we look at Central Asia, there's often been a debate that, why is India pumping so much of money and resources in Central Asia? But we have to understand, there are 3-4 reasons that I would like to highlight. First, of course, is the geography that you cannot change. If we look at Central Asian region, you know, and how the world has looked at Central Asia and, you know, in past, and how important the geography, the strategic location, the Euro-Asian bridge it is, I think makes a reason for India, which is so close to the region as such. I mean, if we had no problems with, you know, China and Pakistan, then probably we would have had a direct link to Central Asia, and just see the significance and importance of the geography. So one is the geographical proximity, the strategic location. The second is the resource-rich country. I mean, I'm not saying you're going to get all the resources, but you know, it is one of the reason that, you know, it draws the international attention. The moment, you know, post 91, you see how the Western countries were attracted towards the resources and trying to control it. Now, sometimes these resources provide you more opportunities, and, you know, at times it also is seen to be as a reason of conflict. But sitting so close to Central Asia, I think, you know, India, because of its civilizational historical links and people-to-people contact, you know, the warmth that is there, and I think the unique relationship exists between the Central Asian people and Indian people. That is one. The third dimension is the security dimensions. And here, I think you cannot allow the strategic space to be used by forces which are inimical to your national interest. And this is also important for India to ensure that Central Asia, which is very secular in its approach, there are problems, there are, the groups, you know, in past when they got independence, the most of the energy was focused on actually suppressing these, or managing, I would say, the Central Asian leaders had to deal with it, particularly Tajikistan, Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan. And even today, for that matter, you know, we need to have that very close contact with the Central Asian countries. So this is one. And finally, I would like to say the changes, the situation which is changing so fast in and around Central Asia makes it very important for India to stay engaged in Central Asia. India can help build, you know, Central Asia as a region which is developed, which is free from the threats of terrorism and many other, you know, issues on science and traditional. And let's not forget what is happening in Afghanistan.
Picking up on your point about Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Now, Ambassador Tayal, one of the focal points of the meeting of the NSAs was the current situation in Afghanistan and its impact on security and stability of the region. So why is Afghanistan so critical to Central Asia?
The Afghanistan and Central Asia, they are just separated by Oxus River, Amudarya. And if we look at history, they have been civilizationally one space. First there was Zoroastrianism and Buddhism, then from 8th century Islam came, and Afghanistan as well as Central Asian became under Islamic kind of rules. Then the Samanids in the 10th century from Central Asia ruled over most of Afghanistan. Then the Ghaznavids, so 11th and 12th century from Afghanistan ruled over much of Central Asia. Babur came from Fargana Valley in the 1520s to Kabul, ruled over Kabul, and then came to India. And this continued, and bulk area was under the Khanate of Bukhara, 15th, 16th, 17th century. And that's why we see a lot of Uzbeks and Tajiks across Oxus River in present day Afghanistan. About 20%, more than 20% of Afghan population is Tajik, about 10% is Uzbek. Then you move further, Dost Muhammad, 1827, when British chased him, he found sanctuary in Bukhara. And when in 1920s Bolsheviks took over that entire Central Asian region, the Bukhara Khan, who was an Uzbek, he found sanctuary in Kabul, where he died in 1944. So all these links are there. And but they were severed when the Soviet Union happened between Afghanistan and Central Asia. But once Soviet Union collapsed, then all these things started again. We know Islamic movement of Uzbekistan and at least Islamic movement of Eastern Turkestan, they all had strong links with the sanctuaries and bases in Afghanistan. Then Northern Alliance, we all remember how Northern Alliance was really funded, financed and supported from Tajikistan. We also had some role in that. Then now let us just come to present day. Taliban are there, and at least four Central Asian republics have accepted that nobody can dislodge Taliban. If Americans and NATO could not do it in 20 years, they cannot be dislodged. And except Tajikistan, others have opened informally all forms of communication, trade, even minister level contacts. Uzbekistan is selling electricity to Afghanistan. Almost 30% of the electricity comes from Uzbekistan. Border trade is all open now. And for instance, Uzbekistan is very keen that this proposed rail link from Termez to Mazar-e-Sharif to Kabul up to Peshawar, that happens, and Taliban are playing ball. So lots of things are happening which show that Afghanistan and Central Asia of course had a civilizational religious link, but economically they are still trying to have some kind of a via media, and in that trade-off the Central Asian republics only want that the terrorists from Afghanistan should not strike in their countries and should not find sanctuary in Afghanistan.
Picking up on that point about terrorism, what was the consensus reached by the national security advisors on the situation in Afghanistan and how to deal with it?
Okay. If we look at, this meeting of national security advisors, I think two key issues that came up, during is the Afghanistan, the security, and of course the connectivity. But I think when we look at the situation in Afghanistan, there more or less everybody agreed that the situation is deteriorating in Afghanistan. There is a humanitarian crisis and there is a need for collective action on part of all the concerned countries, the Central Asians and India. So there is a collective need of the countries to act upon it so that the people are, helped. Secondly, there was also an agreement that Afghanistan, which is full of peace and security, and of course the country where the sovereignty of that nation needs to be secured. So peaceful, secure, stable Afghanistan is what everybody agreed for, and one has to see that the external intervention has always been a problem, and therefore there was a consensus and agreement that there should not be intervention from outside in the internal affairs of the country, which has been the stand when we look at previous agreements, whether it is SCO or bilateral or otherwise. So that was also something which was agreed upon. It was also highlighted that the terrorist organizations basically should not get the sanctuary in Afghanistan, which is also part of the United Nations security resolution, which needs to be respected. And everybody agreed on it, and that was also there. At the same time, there are new technologies which are being misused by these terrorist organizations, and therefore the countries agreed. There is a statement to that effect saying that the countries, the Central Asian and India together has to ensure that propaganda, financing, so it should not be, it should be contained. There should be greater flow of information. We've seen recent, attack on the hotel where the Chinese, have also been a casualty, not the full report. But so this is something which I think the concern about Afghanistan, the concern that Afghanistan should not become the hub of terrorist activities.
What are the factors that bring India and Central Asian republics on the same page when it comes to dealing with the challenges of extremism, terrorism and radicalization in the region?
The Central Asian republics are predominantly Islamic faith the population follows. Only in Kazakhstan about 20% are Russian, so they are Christians. And they are staunchly secular republics. Their leadership is also completely secular, mainly because they come from a Soviet legacy, where they were groomed in that kind of. At that time, religion was suppressed. Now people have their religious freedom, and these countries are worried that they should not move in the direction of political Islam or fundamentalism. And that is a common worry, and that is what brings us together. They have their own solutions. Their mosques, etc., they are controlled by the government, and so what kind of preaching is done, they control. Now, another element which we have to be very watchful of is the growing influence of Turkey in Central Asia. There is the Turkey connection. You know, all these Central Asian tribes had gone to Anatolia in 11th, 12th century. So there is a very strong civilizational, linguistic, religious connection. And there is an organization of Turkic state that had a summit in Samarkand on 11th of November. And we know under Prime Minister Erdogan where Turkey is heading. It is political Islam. And that is what is worrying for India. And we have to see how Central Asian republics control this natural religious impulse of their populations so that it remains channelized in religious direction and does not move first towards political Islam and then towards fundamentalism.
Dr. Rai, now India prides itself on being a committed and reliable partner of the developmental journey of Central Asia. How has this been achieved over the last 3 decades? Because this year we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of diplomatic ties. And how have the Central Asian republics responded to India?
Absolutely. I see if we look at the trajectory of development between India and Central Asia, I would divide it into 3 phases. The initial phase, which is from 91 to 2001, that was the phase when the expectation from the Central Asians was much more. But I think there was a slow movement despite, Prime Minister Narasimha Rao's visit to the... So it was the start point when the expectations were building and India's capability to deliver was less. So, but the engagement is, I would say, the crucial part of it. The second phase was, of course, the watershed movement 2001, and then the security concerns were so high that India started getting involved with building the stronger security cooperation with these countries. So I think that was the time when India became the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. There was an observer status, and I mean the focus was on the security cooperation. So that became, and it worked both ways. Central Asians were also looking at India. They always said, you talked about the response of the Central Asians. At one level, when I interviewed certain people in Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, they said, we don't want India-Pakistan rivalry to be taken into this part, but at the same time, we want constructive engagement of India, the strengths which India has, and that is where, I think we started moving. Our engagement with the region was more about capacity building and about what were the demands of the Central Asians. So I think that was the major difference. They always said this, phrase to me, Russia is the necessity, China is the compulsion, and countries like India, Japan, South Korea and Mongolia are, are reliable partners, So this is what speaks about how we contributed towards what was the demand. We may not have fulfilled all the expected sort of desires of them, but there was, then I would say, the game changer was 2014 and onwards. 2014, because they always wanted a high level visits to the region. They felt that India was not giving enough attention. So I think that was the game changer, and thereafter we have seen how it has scaled up. Let me not, forget the ITech programs, the IT centers, which are center of excellence, which are there in all the countries. We have major scholarships for these under the ITech program, and the Central Asians have benefited a lot from this. We also have those, IT parks which have been, and people have, when you talk to the Central Asians, they will themselves tell you how. We've also, provided food processing plants, in Tajikistan and in Kyrgyzstan. So those are the smaller, and let us not forget the education. You have the Indian universities working, you know, very much in Uzbekistan.
Ambassador Tayal, now Central Asia is extremely rich in mineral and natural resources. So what is being done by India to bolster trade and energy cooperation with the region?
The trade is about $2 billion, and because of connectivity, etc., I really do not see it going up very dramatically. On energy, both Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan have yellow cake, they have uranium. We have agreements with them to buy. With Kazakhstan, we are already buying. On oil and gas, I think we have missed the bus, and Chinese are now dominating that area. ONGC Videsh's experience in Kazakhstan has not been very happy, and there are reasons for that. But where I see a lot of potential is the digital highway and information technology. There, the distance doesn't matter, and there is a lot of effort to have some kind of joint ventures between Indian software companies and Central Asian companies to service the IT market of Russia, because the persons, the experts in Central Asia still know Russian language. So Indian software can be customized for Aeroflot or Russian airlines and banks and telecom companies, etc. But delivery to be done from Central Asia. Already some work is going on, and I really see potential there. Otherwise, there will be only incremental increase in other areas.
Dr. Roy, the other subject that came up for a big focus during the NSA's meeting was connectivity. So take us through the various tracks through which connectivity is being pursued in the region, and what are the challenges?
Well, the connectivity, when we talk about, you know, connectivity with Central Asia, I mean, India has been working very hard along with Russia and Central Asian republics when we talk about the International North-South Transport Corridor, and the Chabahar is another success stories. The third, you know, effort that we see where the Central Asians are also part of it is the Iran, Uzbekistan, India, Afghanistan, as to how we are now working. So there's a regional approach, I would say, when we talk about connectivity. Connectivity cannot be a bilateral, only bilateral initiative. So yes, there are prospects, there are forward movement, and even if we look at India's intent and ability and the most important, the political will to focus on these issues, there's been increase in terms of how much we want to put in on Chabahar. If we look at the budget, that is also a positive movement. The Central Asians are equally keen to, you know, build the connectivity, and this is not to deny the fact that there aren't any challenges. There are alternative routes that are being talked about. There are, you know, problems in terms of sanctions when we look at Chabahar and the Iran. Not that though it is out of the sanctions regime as far as the US is concerned when we talk about Chabahar, yet the movement is very slow. And I think this is where the role of Central Asians becomes very, very important.
Picking up on the point about Russia, Ambassador Tayal, now the meeting of the NSAs took place in the backdrop of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And we all know that the Central Asian region is seen as Russia's backyard. Some 20 to 30% of the population is of Russian origin, and Russian is spoken widely in the region. So how have the Central Asian republics been impacted by the war in Ukraine?
Central Asian republics are very worried. They are very concerned. But they are very new countries. 1992, 93, they became republics. So their sovereignty, all those 15, which are the sort of fallout of the crumbling Soviet empire. And they have seen that in Georgia as well as in Ukraine, Russia has intervened aggressively, and just to say that they are protecting the interests of the Russian minorities there. So Kazakhstan is particularly worried, because 20% population is Russian. Having said that we see their voting in 3rd of March in UNGA, which condemned Russia for invasion of Ukraine. 3 countries abstained: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan.
Instead of voting with Russia?
Instead of voting, they did not, no country voted with Russia.
Yes.
Belarus, of course, and that is not Central Asia. But Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan left the room. They did
not participate.
They did not participate. But in the UN, when Russia was to be expelled from the Human Rights Commission on 7th of April, they voted against that as a matter of principle. There is a lot of dependence of Central Asian republics on Russia. 7 million immigrants from Central Asia work in Russia, and they send back almost $9 billion, which is almost 30% of the GDP of Kyrgyzstan, about 25% of the total income of Tajikistan, and about 9% of Uzbekistan, and all kinds of other ties are there. So they want to enhance their strategic autonomy, and they want to again and again strengthen their sovereignty and territorial integrity boundaries, and there they see India as a very strong partner. Because Central Asia, one side is China, one side is Russia, they can be pressurized from either side. India is a big country, a friendly country, a country which understands their needs, their desires, and in their increase of strategic autonomy, I think India they see as a great partner.
Dr. Roy, now China has become the biggest economic player in the Central Asian republics. The bilateral trade alone is, I believe, now about $50 billion. In September this year, President Xi Jinping chose to visit 4 Central Asian countries on his first overseas trip in 2 years due to COVID-related disruptions, which shows the strategic importance of this region for China. So how is China trying to cultivate the Central Asian republics?
Well, China, is a smart country, when it comes to Central Asia. Though China was always seen with some suspicion, but if we look at, the strategy which the Chinese have adopted, as we say, every tool of foreign policy that a country would want to use, the Chinese have used it. Be it soft power, be it economic ties, be it infrastructure, BRI, be it education. So I think the Chinese have gone, and the Russians were unable to deliver what China could deliver. So that was one big advantage with the Chinese. And the Central Asians realized that they cannot avoid China. So China, through SCO, it is trying, though it's a regional organization and the grouping, but Chinese have already struck the deals bilaterally under these, the regional frameworks. That is one they have done. Even otherwise, if you see bilaterally, they have cultivated each country, by giving them loans, getting the constructions done. They provided some aid also when it comes to the scholarship, setting up of Confucius centers in these countries. So if you look at, and also, building pipelines, roads, railways, and of late you see the defense and security ties as well.
But China is also running into some geopolitical problems. I think some territorial disputes now they have with some of the countries in the region.
But the territorial disputes are between themselves. Not, in fact, Kyrgyzstan gave some land to China.
Yes.
So there are all kinds of pressures. But China is now the biggest trading partner, biggest investor, BRI, and Russia's role is, I think, getting reduced. And after their intervention in Ukraine, it may shrink even further.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Roy and Ambassador Tayal, for sharing your insights on Central Asia with our viewers. India and Central Asia have similar developmental priorities and see eye to eye on most geopolitical issues. As the recent NSA-led meeting has shown, security remains a focal point, but the relationship also has immense potential in trade, transit, investment, and people-to-people connections as India works to build a new Silk Road of friendship and cooperation with Central Asia. Thank you for watching Diplomatic Dispatch. Till we meet again next week, take care and goodbye.